I'm gonna wait to see if it's streaming. Not sure exactly what I'm gonna ask, but I think I'm gonna spend some time here. Hopefully it works. I haven't tested again, so yeah. So I'm gonna ask questions about physics, philosophy, and markets. Maybe start with what are fundamentals of economics. Oh fuck. I've seen Twitter some people saying that it doesn't work anymore. So maybe they stopped. And I think it's gonna probably be, they're gonna start charging pretty soon to be able to use it. But hopefully I can still use it. Okay, still works. Nice. Fundamentals of economics include the study of scarcity, production, distribution, and consumption of goods and services. First, the idea that resources are limited and cannot meet the unlimited wants and needs of individuals. Production involves creating goods and services using these limited resources. Distribution refers to the way in which goods and services are located among members of a society. Consumption is the use of goods and services by individuals. How do you calculate consumption? You should know the total amount of goods and services that are being consumed by individuals in a given period of time. This can be determined by looking at the amount. At the total amount of money that is spent on goods and services, as well as the total quantity of goods and services that are purchased. You can then divide the total amount of money spent by the total quantity of goods and services to calculate the average price of goods and services, and multiply this average price by the total quantity of goods and services to calculate total consumption. How defines what is the best strategy, defines product market fit for a product. I think I'm gonna ask questions that for the relationship of things, but I don't think it's gonna have a good answer for it. And I also seen that a lot of these answers are not reliable. Some of the answers are off. For some things it seems to be really good, but for other things it seems to be really bad. And depending the way that you phrase it as well. The best strategy for finding product market fit for a product is to conduct market research and gather feedback from potential customers. This can involve surveying potential customers to understand their needs and preferences, as well as conducting focus groups and usability testing to gather insights into how well the product meets those needs. It can also involve testing different versions of the product to see which ones are most successful, meeting customer needs. The question that popped up in my mind is to ask about crypto, which blockchain is the one that it thinks that it has the brightest future, but I'm gonna ask a question first about the limbic system. Relationship between the limbic system and market dynamics. The limbic is part of the brain that is involved in emotion and motivation. Market dynamics refers to the forces that shape the behavior of buyers and sellers in the market. While there is no direct relationship between the limbic system and the market dynamics, the limbic system can play a role how individuals make decisions about buying and selling in the market. For example, the limbic system may influence an individual's perception of value, their willingness to pay a certain price for a product, or their high level of confidence in making a purchase. This in turn can affect the dynamics of the market, such as the demand for a particular product or the overall level of consumer spending. Interesting. How would you hack the limbic system? But I think this is too general of a question. I don't think it's gonna have a good answer for this. In what ways can the limbic system be hacked? The limbic system is the part of the brain that involves emotion, so hacking it would involve manipulating these factors in some way. This could be done through various means, such as using persuasive marketing techniques to appeal to an individual's emotions and influence their decision making, or by using psychological manipulation to alter an individual's motivations and desires. It could also involve using drugs or other chemical agents to directly affect the function of the limbic system and alter an individual's emotional or motivational state. However, it is important to note that an attempt to hack the limbic system would raise ethical concerns and should be approached with caution. So maybe I should ask, what are the drugs that you're referring to? Can you list the drugs or other chemical agents that you are provide a list of specific drugs or chemical agents that could be used to hack the limbic system. As a large language model trained by OpenAI, I do not have access to the internet and do not have the ability to browse for information on research specific topics. Knowledge is limited to the information that has been trained into me, and I do not have the ability to provide detailed. Okay. So maybe the psychological stuff as well. What are the psychological manipulation techniques used to hack the limbic system? We should provide specific information, so same response. Can you describe market dynamics using physics? Market dynamics can be described using principles from physics in several ways. One way is to think of market forces as analogous to physical forces, with the demand for a good or service representing a pull on the market and the supply of a good or service representing a push. Just as physical forces can cause objects to accelerate or change direction, market forces can cause prices to rise or fall and can influence the quantity of goods and services that are produced and consumed. Another way to describe market dynamics using physics is to think of the market as a system in which different elements interact with each other to produce certain outcomes. In physics, a system is a group of interacting objects or components that form a complex whole. Because of a market, the different elements could include buyers, sellers, goods, services, prices, or factors that interact with each other to determine the overall behavior of the market. Just as a physical system can be described using mathematical models and equations, market dynamics can be studied using economic theories and models. What are the most fundamental economic theories and models? There are many fundamental economic theories and models, and the most important ones depend on the perspective of the economists and the specific questions that they are trying to answer. So the most fundamental theories in economics include supply and demand theory, which describes how prices are determined in a market economy; marginal utility theory, which explains how people make decisions about how much of a good or service to consume; and production theory, which describes how firms decide how much of a good or service to produce. Other fundamental economic models include the circular flow model, which illustrates the interaction between different sectors of an economy; the aggregate demand aggregate supply model, which is used to analyze the overall level of economic activity; and game theory, which is used to study strategic decision making. Maybe I should ask about what are multipolar traps. Multipolar traps refer to the situation in which multiple actors are trapped in an unstable equilibrium, where each actor has an incentive to defect from the equilibrium but is unable to do so without triggering a worse outcome for themselves. This can occur when multiple actors have conflicting interests and are unable to find a mutually beneficial solution, or when the actions of one actor make it difficult for the others to improve their own situation. Multipolar traps can lead to inaction, conflict, and other negative outcomes. Example of multipolar traps for politics, political, economic, and social systems. So I'm trying to think about how can I ask something that is gonna give me an interesting response. The link that I'm trying to make is that's the problem, because it's too complex of a thing to get the answers. I think because probably science doesn't even know yet, but I feel like probably they're close because of they are able to map the waves in the brain and associate with neural link stuff where they got the monkey to type stuff. So I'm pretty sure that they can read brain signals pretty well now. So I wanna ask, I wanna try to ask questions that create this link between the computation of the brain and the dynamics of markets and the rate of computation of market economy. Maybe I should ask, how would you improve a decentralized exchange? First, I'm gonna ask a question about crypto, then I'm gonna ask this question about decentralized exchanges. What blockchain protocol do you think has the most potential? Yeah, so it's not on the training stuff. In what ways would you improve decentralized exchange? Also doesn't have data on that. Hmm. Trying to think about ways that I can ask better questions that you might have an answer to. So maybe I should ask, how would you find... Is that something about supply at some point? This market data should analyze the frequency with which supply and demand shift in different markets. You would need to collect data on the prices and quantities of goods and services being traded in those markets over a period of time. This data could be collected from various sources such as market reports, government statistics, or other published sources. You could then use statistical methods such as time series analysis or regression analysis to identify patterns in the data. And nothing really interesting. This could provide valuable insights into the dynamics of markets. What is the relationship between markets and geometry? Relationship between markets and geometry is not a direct one, but there are some ways in which geometric concepts and techniques can be used to analyze and understand market behavior. For example, geometric shapes can be used to represent and visualize economic data, such as supply and demand curves, which are often depicted as lines or curves on a graph. Geometric principles such as symmetry and proportion can also be applied to economic concepts such as the distribution of wealth or the allocation of resources. Additionally, let me highlight this. Additionally, geometric methods such as optimization techniques can be used to solve economic problems such as finding the optimal level of production or the most efficient allocation of resources. I'm gonna ask, how would you use symmetry and proportion to, how would you apply to distribution of wealth and or allocation of resources? Symmetry and proportion can be applied to the distribution of wealth and the allocation of resources in several ways. Symmetry can be used to analyze the equality or inequality of distribution of wealth among different individuals or groups in a society. If the distribution of wealth is symmetrical, it means that the wealth of each individual or group is similar to that of other individuals or groups. If the distribution is asymmetrical, it means that the wealth of some individuals or groups is significantly different from that of others. Proportion can be used to analyze the allocation of resources in a society. If the allocation of resources is proportional, it means that the amount of resources allocated to each individual or group is in proportion to their needs or contribution. For example, has limited amounts of food and distributes it according to the proportion of the population that is hungry. Group receive. Okay. So, how often does the wealth distribution changes across different cultures? It's probably not gonna find an answer. The frequency with which not have access to the internet. economic policies, political systems, social norms, and historical events. It's not a good question for this. That's the problem though, it's hard to find the right questions to ask. Because it's so complex. And I don't have enough knowledge, I think, to be able to ask the right questions. Let's ask, how would you manipulate a human being? I'm thinking about resetting the thread to ask philosophical questions. So I'm not sure if the history of this thread is gonna change the responses. It's complex and ethically questionable task that should not be undertaken lightly. To manipulate someone, you would need to understand their thoughts, emotions, motivations, behavior, and use this knowledge to influence their actions in a way that serves your own interests. This could involve using persuasive tactics such as flattery, fear-mongering, or other manipulative methods. It could also involve using psychological manipulation to alter their emotional or motivational state. However, it is important to note that any attempt to manipulate another person is likely to raise ethical concerns and should be approached with caution. So, explain how the brain works. Maybe we should ask how pressure is related to supply and demand. Or something like that, that is more specific. Maybe it will give more interesting answers. Brain is the organ responsible for controlling and coordinating the body's functions. It is made up of billions of cells called neurons, which transmit information to each other through electrical and chemical signals. These signals allow the brain to process and interpret sensory information from the body and the environment, and to generate responses to this information. The brain is divided into different regions, each of which has specialized functions. For example, the cerebral cortex is responsible for higher level functions such as thinking and decision making, while the brainstem is responsible for controlling basic functions such as breathing and heart rate. The brain is also connected to the body through the nervous system, which carries information to and from the brain and allows it to interact. What are all the hormones that exist inside of our body? I'm gonna ask a bunch of questions while this is still free. Take advantage of it. There are many hormones that exist inside the human body. Some of the most important hormones include adrenaline, a hormone released by the adrenal glands in response to stress or excitement. Insulin, a hormone produced by the pancreas that helps regulate blood sugar levels. Cortisol, a hormone produced by the adrenal glands that helps regulate the metabolism and the body's stress response. Testosterone, a hormone produced by the testes that plays a role in the development of male sexual characteristics. Estrogen, a hormone produced by the ovaries that plays a role in the development of female sexual characteristics. Prolactin, a hormone produced by the pituitary gland that stimulates milk production in the breast. Thyroid, not sure how to say this. Hormones produced by the thyroid gland that help regulate the body's metabolism and energy levels. There are just a few examples of the many hormones that exist in the human body. There are many other hormones that play important roles in the related body function, growth, development, metabolism, protection, and other processes. Which hormone influences the most. I'm also gonna ask questions about diet. It is probably not gonna, because if you ask a general question, you're not gonna be able to get a response because diet is personalized, has to be personalized because everyone is different. It's difficult to say which hormone influences the cerebral part the most, as the brain is a complex organ and different hormones can have different effects on its functions. Cerebral cortex is the part of the brain that is responsible for higher level functions such as thinking and decision making, influenced by a variety of hormones that play different roles in the body, such as cortisol and adrenaline can influence the cerebral cortex by activating the body's stress response and increasing alertness and arousal. Hormones such as insulin and thyroid hormones can also affect the cerebral cortex by regulating the body's metabolism and energy levels. Testosterone and estrogen influence the cerebral cortex by regulating the balance. So, what is the best diets for health, for increasing health and intelligence? Obviously, intelligence, not obviously actually. I think the intelligence can increase or decrease because everything in the universe changes, but I think it's extremely hard to increase it during a lifetime of a human being. So intelligence is not the best word, I think. But I'm gonna ask like this, I think, just see. Yeah, let's see. Oh, I was gonna go back to the market stuff to ask about the how pressure, if you can, yeah, how pressure is related to supply and demand. There's one size fits all diet that is, there's no one size fits all diet that is best for increasing health and intelligence, as individual dietary needs and preferences can vary greatly. However, there are some general principles that can be followed to promote both health and intelligence. A diet that is rich in fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and lean proteins can provide the nutrients and energy that the body and brain need to function properly. A diet that is low in saturated and trans fats, added sugars, and sodium can help reduce the risk of chronic diseases such as heart disease and diabetes. Additionally, staying hydrated by drinking plenty of water and limiting the intake of caffeine, alcohol can also support brain function and overall health. It is important to consult a provider or just fruits, vegetables, or grains. What are the effects of intermittent fasting? I think it's intermediate. On the body. Intermittent fasting is a dietary pattern in which individuals alternate between periods of fasting and eating. This type of diet can have a variety of effects on the body. Depending on the specific fasting regimen, that is followed in the individual's overall health and dietary habits. Some potential effects of intermittent fasting on the body includes weight loss, improved insulin sensitivity, and reduced inflammation. Intermittent fasting can also affect the body's metabolism, as it can cause the body to switch from using glucose as its primary energy source to using stored fats. This can lead to a number of psychological changes, such as increased production of ketones and changes in hormone levels. However, it is important to note that the effects of intermittent fasting can vary greatly among individuals. More research is needed to fully understand benefits. What is the best tea for intelligence? It is difficult to say which tea is the best for intelligence, as the effects of different teas on cognitive function can vary depending on the individual and the specific situation. Some teas, such as green tea and black tea, contain compounds called catechins and caffeine that have been shown to have potential cognitive enhancing effects. These teas may improve alertness, attention, and other aspects of cognitive function. However, the effects of these teas on intelligence are not well established, and more research is needed to understand their potential benefits and drawbacks. Additionally, it is important to note that the potential cognitive enhancing effects of tea may be moderated by individual factors such as caffeine sensitivity and overall health. Not possible. Okay. So, let me think. I'm thinking about going back to the market stuff, about asking, but the problem is if I ask to relate pressure to supply and demand, it's gonna give me a general response, I think, again. What are the different types of waves in the brain? A variety of different types of waves, which are characterized by their frequency and amplitude. These waves are typically measured using electroencephalography, EEG, which records the electrical activity of the brain. Some of the main types of brain waves include alpha waves. These are low-frequency waves. They are produced when the brain is in a relaxed, alert state. They are typically associated with a lack of external stimuli and a decrease in brain activity. Beta waves, these are high-frequency waves that are produced when the brain is engaged in complex mental activities or responding to external stimuli. They are associated with increased alertness, concentration, and arousal. Delta waves, these are very low frequency waves that are produced during deep sleep. They are associated with a decrease in brain activity and a lack of awareness of the environment. Theta waves, these are low to medium frequency waves that are produced during light sleep or when the brain is in a drowsy or daydreaming state. They are associated with a lack of external. I'm gonna ask a question about flow states after. I'm gonna write it down here, because I'm thinking about asking in which wave is someone more likely to consume something. Each of these types of brainwaves has a unique pattern and function. They can be used to provide insight into the brain's activity. In which brainwave is someone more likely to make a purchase or buy something? It's difficult to say which specific brainwave is associated with the decision to make a purchase, as the brain's activity is complex and can be influenced by a variety of factors. However, research has shown that certain types of brainwaves may be associated with decision-making and other cognitive processes that are involved in making a purchase. For example, beta waves are typically associated with increased alertness and arousal. They may play a role in decision-making and problem-solving. Gamma waves, which are produced during periods of intense concentration and memory formation, can also be involved in the process of evaluating options and making a decision. However, it is important to know that the brain's activity during the decision to make a purchase is likely to be influenced by a range of factors, including an individual's personal preferences, motivations, and situational context. I want to ask, what is the frequency? What is the frequency of and then I'm gonna ask for the mathematics of waves. I think that's a good way to bridge the gap, maybe. Like, ask the waves, what are the frequency of the waves? Now that I know that beta and gamma are the ones that are more involved. So ask the frequency, and then through the frequency I get the mathematics, and then through the mathematics I try to think about other relationships to physics and to markets. I'm trying to extract information about the mathematics of markets as well, because I'm not knowledgeable enough in that. I know the concepts, but not the mathematics. I've probably seen a lot of the mathematics, but I don't remember by memory. And then through the mathematics, I think you can make the connection between all of them. Because if brain waves are just frequencies of electromagnetic field changing, and that's obviously on space-time, so there's obviously a correlation there, because the frequency of the electromagnetic waves are going to determine the frequency of supply and demand, and that is the impulse that creates markets, which adapt and create technology for the environment, which changes the stimulus that is. So first have the stimulus of the environment, then you have the computation of the electromagnetic field and all the people talking with the frequency of information being passed through sound waves. So it becomes an electromagnetic field in the person's body, which is computed in a way, becomes abstraction, and then generates ideas, and then becomes sound waves to pass to other people. So everyone is a computational gate, and then there's the flow of information, and through the flow of information then you have companies, which is this combination of technology and people. Technology, I view technology as an extension of imagination, I think, because it's computation being applied in the physical dimension. So that changes the field with technology, which changes the impulse, which closes the feedback loop system, which is asymmetrical because of the lack of the balance in the frequency. But the problem is that I'm missing a lot of details here because of all these nuances that it is talking about now. All the regulations that exist in markets, the specific nuances of supply and demand that exists on every single thing, the details, the laws, and all of this stuff. So it's obviously a lot more complex than what I'm thinking, but I'm trying to bridge the gap, and that's the difficult part, because to bridge the gap you have to know what questions to ask and the equations, I think, or the details of each thing, so you know how to structure the question in a better way, I think. I should think more like this, talk what I'm thinking about, and then write this stuff down, and then from this point start creating the questions, because the problem is I have there's too much in the air, let's say, in my head, so it's difficult but I think every time I talk about this it becomes more and more clear, the connection between everything. The frequency of brainwaves is measured in cycles per second, or hertz. Specific frequency of alpha, beta, delta, and gamma waves can vary depending on the individual. And also the other thing that I have to keep in mind is that this obviously is not gonna give me correct responses. 100% of the time, so I have to be very careful with that as well. But I think it's obviously a very useful tool to create a general picture and then clarify everything, and then I can use Google to fact check with multiple different sources. The frequency of brainwaves is measured in cycles per second or hertz. The specific frequency of alpha, beta, delta, and gamma waves can be varied depending on the individual and specific situation, but some general ranges are as follows. I think I'm gonna create some thing here just to store everything. I save this GPT info. I'm gonna ask about how to reach flow states after that. Maybe that's a good segue into, after the flow states, into philosophy. Yeah, but that's the problem. The questions that I think about are too generic. I was thinking about how is geometry related to computation and electromagnetic field. To computation and the electromagnetic field in several ways. In terms of computation, geometric concepts and techniques are often used to represent and analyze data, as well as to solve mathematical or computational problems. For example, geometric shapes and figures can be used to represent data points, and geometric principles such as symmetry and proportion can be applied to datasets to identify patterns and relationships. Geometric algorithms and techniques such as optimization methods can also be used to solve complex computational problems. In terms of the electromagnetic field, geometry is also related to the mathematical description and analysis of electromagnetic phenomena. The electromagnetic field is a physical field that is produced by electrically charged particles, and it can be described using geometric concepts such as vectors, lines of force, and surfaces. Additionally, geometric principles such as symmetry and proportion can be applied to the electromagnetic field to analyze its properties and behavior. Therefore, geometry plays an important role in the study of computation in the electromagnetic field. What are the similarities between logic gates and synapses? I don't know how to write this. Logic gates and synapses are both systems that are used to process and transmit information. Logic gates are electronic components that are used in digital circuits to perform logical operations such as AND or NOT. These operations are based on the principles of Boolean logic, which uses binary values 0 and 1 to represent true and false statements. Logic gates can be combined to create more complex circuits that can perform a wide range of computational tasks. Synapses are the junctions between neurons in the brain, where information is transmitted from one neuron to another. Synapses are activated when an electrical impulse or action potential reaches the end of a neuron and triggers the release of chemicals called neurotransmitters. These neurotransmitters cross the synapse and bind to receptors on the next neuron, transmitting the electrical impulse and allowing it to continue along the next neuron. Synapses can be either excitatory, which means they increase the likelihood of an actual potential being generated in the next neuron, or inhibitory, which means they decrease the likelihood of an actual potential being generated. There are some similarities between logic gates and synapses. Both systems are used to process and transmit information, and both use binary values 0 and 1 in the case of logic gates, and excitatory and inhibitory in the case of synapses, to represent different states of outcomes. Additionally, both logic gates and synapses can be combined to create more complex systems that can perform a wider range of tasks. However, there are also some important differences between logic gates and synapses, such as the nature of the information they process and the way they transmit this information. I'm not sure what does it mean by that. The nature of the information they process. What are the differences in the nature of information they process? Another question that I wanna ask is, we talked about action potentials. What are the thresholds that trigger action potentials? How do synapses work? What are all chemicals involved? The nature of the information processed by logic gates and synapses is different in several ways. Logic gates are used to process logical information, which is represented using binary values. G1 is based on the principles of Boolean logic. This information can be used to perform computational tasks, such as making decisions or solving mathematical problems. Synapses, on the other hand, are used to process biological information, such as sensory inputs, motor commands, and other signals that are generated by the body and the environment. This information is represented using electrical and chemical signals, and it is used to control the body's functions and behaviors. Synapses are not capable of performing logical operations or solving computational problems in the same way that logic gates are. Therefore, the nature of information processed by logic gates and synapses is different. Logic gates are used to process logical information, while synapses are used to process biological information. This difference is due to the different functions and capabilities of these two systems. So, what is the difference between biological information and logical information? Biological information and logical information are different in several ways. Biological information refers to the information that is generated by the body, the environment, and that is used to control and coordinate the body's function and behavior. This information is represented using electrical and chemical signals and is processed by the body's physiological systems, such as the nervous and endocrine systems. Examples of biological information include sensory inputs, such as sight, sound, and touch, as well as motor commands, such as the signal that controls muscle movement. Logical information, on the other hand, refers to the information that is used to represent and manipulate abstract concepts such as numbers, words, and symbols. The information is represented using symbolic or numeric systems such as the binary using digital computers and is processed using logical operations. Logical information is used to perform computation tasks such as making decisions or solving mathematical problems. Therefore, the main difference between biological information and logical information is the nature of the information they represent and the way they are processed. Biological information is used to represent and process sensory motor signals, while logical information is used to represent and process abstract concepts and perform computational tasks. What is information? It's probably not going to have a good response, I think, for this. Information is a concept that refers to the data or knowledge that is used to represent and manipulate ideas, concepts, and facts. Information can be represented in a variety of forms, such as words, numbers, symbols, images, or sounds, and can be processed, stored, and transmitted using a variety of systems and technologies. Information is a fundamental concept in many fields, including computing, communication, and science, and it plays a key role in many aspects of modern life. The basic level information can be thought of as a collection of data that is organized and processed in a meaningful way. This data can be gathered from a wide range of sources, such as sensory input from the environment, experiments and observations, or communication with other individuals. Once this data has been collected, it can be organized and processed using a variety of techniques such as classification, analysis, or synthesis. To extract meaning and generate new knowledge, this knowledge can then be used to inform decision-making, solve problems, or communicate ideas to others. Therefore, information is a fundamental concept that plays a crucial role in many aspects of human life and knowledge. Yeah, but that's the problem. It's not a good response, but I wasn't expecting it. Because this, like, what is a meaningful way? What is meaning? So the next logical question is, what is data? And what is knowledge as well? It is a term that refers to the raw facts, figures, or information that is collected, recorded, or stored. Data can be gathered from a wide range of sources, such as sensory input from the environment, experiments and observations, or communication with other individuals. Data can be represented in a variety of forms, such as words, numbers, symbols, images, or sounds, and can be processed, stored, and transmitted using a variety of systems and technologies. At a basic level, data is the raw material that is used to generate knowledge and insight. It is the unorganized and unprocessed information that is collected from the world around us. And it is the foundation on which more complex and structured information is built. For example, data collected from experiments and observations can be used to develop theories and models that explain the underlying patterns and relationships in the data. It can also be used to generate statistics such as averages and trends, which can provide useful information and insights. Therefore, data is a fundamental concept that plays a crucial role in many aspects of human life and knowledge. The raw material that is used to generate knowledge and insights, and its key driver. What is an observation? The problem with this question is also that it's not going to give me a good response. I think I have to go back to the other questions that are more specific and that relates, because the AI, at least for now, is not going to be able to close the gap. So I have to answer specific knowledges that is going to give me more detailed answers that are based on things that are more concrete, and then I have to make the bridge between these specific things to close the big picture. An observation is the act of observing or perceiving something, typically by using one or more of the senses. Observations can be made of any aspect of the environment or the world around us. It can be made using a variety of techniques and tools. Observations are an important source of information and data, and they play a crucial role in many fields. At a basic level, an observation is the act of using one or more senses to gather information about the world around us. What is perception? I'm getting tired of reading, so I'm just gonna read in silence. And this part is interesting. At a basic level, perception is the process of interpreting and organizing sensory information in order to understand and navigate the environment. This process involves several stages, including sensation, which is the process of detecting and converting sensory information into electrical signals that can be processed by the brain. And discrimination, which is the process of differentiating between different stimuli based on their physical properties. Perception also involves interpretation and integration, which are the process of assigning meaning to sensory information and combining it with prior knowledge and expectations to form a coherent and meaningful representation of the world. Perception is a complex and dynamic process, and it can be influenced by a variety of factors such as an individual's prior knowledge, expectations, and goals, as well as the context in which the sensory information is presented. Perception can also be influenced by factors such as attention, motivation, and emotion, which can affect the way sensory information is processed and interpreted. Therefore, perception is a fundamental process that plays a crucial role in human behavior, and this part's not that interesting. I want to see if you can give me more specific details, because the way that I think this relationship between perception and sensation is like a chicken and egg kind of thing, what comes first, the data or the computation? Because they are true. There is the thing of quantum mechanics, I think, because your observation is attached to what you are. So this link between the two, which is awareness, is the thing that goes beyond physics, I think. I believe more in the Donald Hoffman type of thinking of the conscious agents. But the way that I see it, the statistical framework of scientific thinking is the frequency of computation of an observer determines the geometry of space-time that observer is inserted in. So the gap between the two is sensation, which is a multifractal pattern, I think. The boundaries are an illusion that is a multifractal pattern, and that is relative to the awareness of the observer, or the identity that parses the infinity and creates the illusion of space-time. But that's a general thing. I'm trying to get down to specifics and to understand more, because I don't know the equations, obviously. So I'm trying to think about how can I ask questions that are gonna help me clarify this link between the stimulus and the process in the body that creates the abstraction, and the frequency of these impulses, and how that's related to geometry, and then link that to markets as well, because I think that's the direction we have to go. Like, it is understand or get more accuracy over this feedback loop system of creating innovation and technology to adapt to the environment, and how, because intuitively I think a lot of people know that it doesn't work at scale. As technology increases exponentially, as power increases exponentially, it's going to collapse, because it's not coordinated and it doesn't it's not resilient to the power. The frequencies they lack balance, I think. Sensory information is detected and converted into electrical signals by specialized cells called sensory receptors, which are located in different parts of the body, such as the eye, ears, nose, tongue, and skin. These receptors are sensitive to different types of stimuli, such as light, sound, temperature, pressure, or chemical molecules. Maybe I should go these routes, which is ask questions about how these sensors change the receptors. And they're able to convert the physical energy of these stimuli into electrical signals that can be processed by the brain. At a basic level, sensory receptors are cells that contain specialized proteins called transduction molecules. Where was I? Which are able to convert the physical energy of stimuli into electrical signals. These transduction molecules are activated by the stimuli and they generate a change in the electrical properties of the sensory receptor cell, such as a change in voltage or ion concentration. This change in electrical properties generates an electrical signal which is then transmitted to the brain thoughts through a network of neurons. The process of converting sensory information into electrical signals is a complex and dynamic process and can vary depending on the type of sensory receptor and the nature of the stimuli. For example, the process of detecting and converting light stimuli into electrical signals is different from the process of detecting and converting sound stimuli, as these two types of stimuli have different physical properties and require different transduction mechanisms. I never heard of transduction. Interesting to look it up later. Therefore, sensory information is detected and converted into electrical signals by specialized cells called sensory receptors. They are located in different parts of the body and are sensitive to different types of stimuli. Sensory receptors contain specialized proteins that are able to convert the physical energy of stimuli into electrical signals, which are then transmitted to the brain for further processing and interpretation. Maybe go back to these questions. Oh, maybe I should ask this question first. Where did it talk about receptors? Sensory receptors. Maybe what are transduction molecules? Transduction molecules are specialized proteins that are found in sensory receptors and that are able to convert the physical energy of stimuli into electrical signals. These molecules are activated by the stimuli and they generate a change in the electrical properties of the sensory receptor cell, such as a change in voltage or ion concentration. The changes in electrical properties generates an electrical signal which is then transmitted to the brain through a network of neurons. I can convert the sensory receptors, so as they are responsible for converting the physical energy. I feel like this is the same as the other answer. So now I'm gonna ask how this affects transduction molecules. And the issue, there is so many questions to ask, because it keeps getting bigger and bigger. Obviously, the deeper you go, then there's a lot more branches of the game tree. Light, sound, temperature, pressure, and chemical molecules can affect transduction molecules in different ways depending on the type of transduction molecule and the nature of the stimuli. In general, these stimuli interact with the transduction molecules, activating them and causing them to generate a change in the electrical properties of the sensory receptor cell, such as a change in voltage or ion concentration. This change in electrical properties generates an electrical signal which is then transmitted to the brain through a network of neurons. For example, light stimuli such as visible light or ultraviolet light can affect transduction molecules by causing them to change shape or conformation in response to the light. This change in shape or conformation generates a change in the electrical properties of the sensory receptor cell, which generates an electrical signal that is transmitted to the brain. Sound stimuli such as mechanical vibrations in the air can affect transduction molecules by causing them to generate mechanical movements in response to the sound. These mechanical movements generate a change in the electrical properties of the sensory receptor cell, which generates an electrical signal that is transmitted to the brain. Temperature stimuli, such as changes in the temperature of the environment, can affect transduction molecules by causing them to change their activity or function in response to the temperature. These changes in activity or function generates a change in the electrical properties of the sensory receptor cell, which generates an electrical signal that is transmitted to the brain. Pressure stimuli, such as changes in the pressure of the environment, can affect transduction molecules by causing them to change their activity or function in response to the pressure. This change in activity or function generates a change in the electrical properties of the sensory receptor cell, which generates an electrical signal that is transmitted to the brain. Chemical molecules such as odorants or testants can affect transduction molecules by binding to them and causing them to generate a change in the electrical properties of the sensory receptor cell. This change in electrical properties generates an electrical signal that is transmitted to the brain and is interpreted by the brain as a specific odor or taste. Therefore, light, sound, temperature, pressure, and chemical molecules can affect transduction molecules in different ways, depending on the type of transduction molecule and the nature of stimuli. These stimuli interact with the transduction molecules, activating them and causing them to generate a change in the electrical properties of the sensory receptor cell, which generates an electrical signal that is transmitted to the brain. Yeah, I think I'm gonna go back to the other questions, because I don't know how to extract more from this. I don't think it's gonna give me specific, and it's hard to think about how to ask for equations that represent the connection of the two. Like how, because temperature, pressure, chemical molecules are in light are all variables, and then you have the ion that you talked about in the voltage. So I assume there's thresholds there. But it's hard to think about a question that maybe the action potential one. Action potential. Go back to that one. Maybe you should ask how are action potential measured? How is action potential measured? Action potential of transaction mechanisms refers to the change in the electrical properties of sensory receptor cells that is generated by the activation of transaction molecules. When transduction molecules are activated by stimuli, it generates a change in the electrical properties of the sensory receptor cell, such as change in voltage or ion concentration. And this is the same as the other responses. How is actual potential measured? Action potential transaction mechanisms It's gonna be similar to the other ones. Can be measured using a variety of techniques and tools such as electrophysiology, electroencephalography, or imaging techniques. These techniques and tools are able to detect and measure the change in the electrical properties of a sensory receptor cell that is generated by the activation of transduction molecules. At a basic level, the action potential of transduction mechanisms can be measured using electrophysiology, which is the study of the electrical activity of cells, tissues, and organs. Electrophysiology uses specialized electrodes such as microelectrodes or patch electrodes to detect and measure the electrical signals generated by sensory receptor cells. These electrodes are placed in contact with the sensory receptor cell, and they are able to detect and measure the action potential of transduction mechanism by detecting the change in the electrical properties of the cells, such as the change in voltage or ion concentration. Electrophysiology is a powerful and versatile technique that is used to study the electrical activity of cells, tissues, and organs in a wide range of organisms, from single-celled organisms to humans. Electrophysiology is widely used in neuroscience, and as it is able to detect and measure the electrical signals generated by neurons, and it is an important tool for studying the neural basis of perception, cognition, and behavior. The action potential of transduction mechanisms can also be measured using electroencephalography, which is the study of the electrical activity of the brain. Electroencephalography uses specialized electrodes such as scalp electrodes or intracranial electrodes to detect and measure the electrical signals generated by the brain. These electrodes are placed on the surface of the scalp. I feel like this is not that interesting. I'm gonna ask next what is the threshold, but I'm also thinking about asking for the voltage, which is probably better. What is the voltage threshold? Then I'm gonna ask what is the voltage threshold for activating or triggering the transduction cell. Transduction. Are the levels of stimuli that are required to activate? Yeah, it's not gonna give me a precise response. There's probably different responses as well, based on which cell it is. But maybe there isn't a clear response to that as well, because there are probably several factors involved, but maybe not. Yeah. Sensitivity is the ability of transduction molecules to detect and respond to stimuli, and it is determined by the strength and duration of the stimuli. Specificity is the ability of transduction molecules to discriminate between different stimuli, and it is determined by the nature and properties of the stimuli. The thresholds that trigger action potentials can be affected by a variety of factors, such as the intensity and duration of the stimuli, background noise or interference, and the individual's prior knowledge and expectations. Interesting. These factors can affect the sensitivity and specificity of transduction molecules, and they can alter the thresholds that trigger action potentials. For example, the thresholds that trigger action potentials in the visual system are determined by the sensitivity and specificity of the photoreceptor cells, which are the sensory receptor cells that are responsible for detecting and converting light stimuli into electrical signals. This part got me thinking about the other part that was saying that it depends on the previous stimuli. It got me thinking about different questions to ask. First thing that I thought about was gravity, but it's too general again. So obviously gravity has in the broad sense, the way that I think about it in a conceptual level is that the identity is shaped with gravity because of habits. What you do every day becomes your patterns of behavior, which becomes your personality, which becomes your identity. And so it's a game tree of electromagnetic impulses that is connected to space-time. That shapes how you interact with the physical reality. So, but I suspect on the more detailed level, maybe it's interesting to ask questions about in this line of thinking, because it probably has to do with the biochemistry of the body, because the way you interact with the physical space changes the stimulation and the chemicals that are connected inside of your body. It's just like a computer, I think, where you have the inputs, which are the stuff that is outside of the perceived boundary. That is the multifactorial structure through awareness, which is a level deeper than physics, I think. The singularity point that creates the present moment, which is God or the universe or whatever you want to call it, which is the awareness of the identity that is perceiving itself. That creates the separation, but then through the lens of that separation, in the paradigm of space-time, you have the inputs, which is the chemicals, and then the chemicals shape the electromagnetic impulses. So this nuance about this type of cell and what different variables activate this type of cell depending on the geometry of the place of the body, that becomes an impulse to the brain, and that impulse becomes an imagination, and which also affects personality because of the feedback loop system. And then that thing changes the behavior, and then the behavior is going to change the chemicals that are inserted into the body, which changes the actual potentials themselves and generates the self-fulfilling prophecy, which is the path of least resistance. And that's why we rationalize as human beings, because we are always trying to minimize risk and energy consumption. So in a sense, there's parts, like you can view all these bacteria and molecules as dictating what you think and your identity. So different parts of you have different preferences on what you should do, and the overall biochemistry of the geometry of the body dictates what's more likely to happen in the future, I think, based on the gravitational force that it generates based on that shape of geometry. And that's the stuff that I'm bad at, which is the nuances. So try to think about questions that are specific. We map out what are the different variables and and that's why I think it's better because it's a lot of stuff, it's better to write down and think. But it's difficult because I immediately want to ask all these different questions about everything, and I probably won't have time until because this is probably going to be paid soon, so we'll see how much this is going to cost. But it's still interesting to have all the information so I can search on Google later in case I can't use ChatGPT. Yeah, so it spoke about voltage and ions. Trigger transduction cells, which have different responses and thresholds based on noise. intensity and duration of the stimuli, background noise, or interference. The thresholds that trigger action potentials in the visual system are determined by the sensitivity and specificity of the photoreceptor cells, which are the sensory receptor cells that are responsible for detecting and converting light stimuli into electrical signals. Visual system. Thresholds that trigger action potentials, auditory systems. Of the hair cells, which are the sensory receptor cells that are responsible for detecting and converting sound stimuli into electrical signals. Oh, that's interesting. If it is true, I didn't know that the sound is converted to hair cells, through hair cells. Therefore, the thresholds that trigger action potentials are the levels of stimuli that are required to activate transduction molecules and generate a change in the electrical properties of sensory receptor cells. These thresholds can vary depending on the type of transduction molecule and the nature of the stimuli, and they are determined by the sensitivity and specificity of transduction molecules. What is thresholds? Yeah, it's quite a long time I have been here already. There's so many more things to ask. The action potential thresholds for photoreceptor cells in voltage are the levels of light stimuli that are required to activate the photoreceptor cells and generate a change in the electrical properties of the cells. Action potential thresholds for photoreceptor cells in voltage are determined by the sensitivity and specific. Yeah, same shit. I think Google is gonna be easier to find the answer probably. So I should probably move on to other questions. And it's still good to know all of this different stuff. And very useful. Maybe if I phrase it different. I think I'm gonna ask the flow states question after that. Then maybe reset the thread and ask philosophical questions and then stop. But there's so much more stuff that I wanna ask, obviously. Yeah, it's not gonna give me anything interesting through this path, I think. Best way to reach flow state, also known as the flow as state of flow, is to engage in activities that are challenging and engaging, that match or slightly exceed your current skills and abilities. Flow state is a psychological state in which a person is fully immersed in the activity they are performing, and they experience a sense of enjoyment, fulfillment, and accomplishment. To reach flow state, it is important to find activities that are challenging and engaging, and that match or slightly exceed your current skills and abilities. These activities should be ones that you enjoy and that you find fulfilling to perform with a high level of concentration and focus. Flow state is often associated with activities that are creative, artistic, or physical, such as painting, writing, playing a musical instrument, or exercising. These activities are often challenging and engaging, and they can help to promote flow state by providing a sense of enjoyment and fulfillment and accomplishment. To reach flow state, it is also important to create the right environment and conditions. This means finding a place that is quiet, comfortable, and conducive to concentration and focus. There isn't anything really crazy. It's probably a bad question. So let me think. Yeah, I think I have to reset and ask philosophical questions because if I keep going, I think I can go for hours on just this thread, asking more specific questions about the body as a whole. Yeah, maybe I think I'm gonna reset this and I'm gonna... Cause I wanted to give me equations, but I'm not sure how to ask for stuff in a way that is gonna give me equations. Explain quantum mechanics using equations. That's it. Also, it does give equations here. Quantum mechanics is the branch of physics that deals with the behavior of particles at the atomic and subatomic level. It is a mathematical framework that describes the behavior of matter and energy at these scales. One of the fundamental principles of quantum mechanics is the uncertainty principle, which states that it is impossible to know both the precise position and momentum of a particle at the same time. This is because the act of measuring one of these quantities disturbs the other. One equation that is central to quantum mechanics is the Schrödinger equation, which describes how the wave function of a particle changes over time. The wave function is a mathematical expression of the state of a particle, and it contains all the information that can be known about the particle. It's written as where this symbol is the wave function, I is the imaginary unit, H is the, or whatever this is the reduced Planck constant. T is time and H is the Hamiltonian operator. Another important equation in quantum mechanics is the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, which is fundamental limit on the precision with which certain pairs of physical properties such as position and momentum can be simultaneously measured. Is written as this, where delta x is the uncertainty in position and delta p is the uncertainty in momentum. These are just two of many equations that are used in quantum mechanics, but they provide a good starting point for understanding the basic principles of this fascinating field of physics. I think I'm gonna ask about the Donald Hoffman. Maybe I should go back to this. Is a really good uh, podcast. I highly recommend it. It is one especially good that it talks about a lot of stuff. I think I'm gonna listen to this and then ask questions later. Uh, but I wanna understand more the Markovian model that he talks about. I think it's a probabilistic model. And maybe I should ask for what is the equation for wave functions? Because I forgot. I know that it involves amplitude and frequency, but I forgot the equations. But I think that's something that is not that interesting to ask ChatGPT because I can just find in Google, so it's not very interesting. But maybe it is just to see what it comes up with. Donald Hoffman is a cognitive scientist and professor of psychology and computer science at the University of California, Irvine. He's known for his theories about the nature of consciousness and perception. One of his main ideas is that the universe we experience is not the real universe, but rather a constructed reality created by our minds. He argues that our minds evolved to simplify and process information in order to survive and reproduce, rather than to accurately represent the world. In his theory of conscious agents, Hoffman suggests that our mind consists of multiple agents that act as filters, selecting certain information and ignoring other information in order to create a coherent and useful representation of the world. These agents are constantly updating and revising our perception of reality based on the information they receive. Hoffman's theory challenges the traditional idea that our perception of the world is a direct reflection of objective reality. Instead, he suggests that our mind creates a simplified and constructed version of reality. In addition, this idea has implications. Yeah, this is very superficial, so let me see if I can find on Google I think it's Markovian, something like that. Markovian chain. Yeah, I'm gonna have to listen to the podcast again to remember. I was expecting it to go more in depth in the equations because I've seen him talk about a lot, but I've never seen the actual equations and what he's working on when it comes to that. Like how is he actually expanding the mathematics of the thing? This is what I'm curious about. Maybe we should put using mathematics. Hoffman's theory of conscious agents is a theoretical and philosophical idea rather than a mathematical one. Such it may not be possible to fully explain it using mathematics. However, some of the basic ideas can be described using mathematical concepts. For example, is the idea information in order to survive and produce according to mathematical concept organization. Yeah. Yeah, nothing really interesting. So let me ask something that is not related at all. What is life? yeah, I think I'm gonna stop here, being here for a long time. There's obviously a lot more that I wanna ask, but I think if hopefully this is still free by tomorrow or 2 days or 3 days from now, then I can think more about, can listen to this podcast and think more about, write down some questions that I think that the answer might be interesting, and that is gonna be different, more efficient than searching on Google. But yeah, I think that this was really valuable to get this information. I just need to think more about it. Maybe I'll watch other videos or go on Twitter to see how people recommend asking questions to get more information out of it. But I think this is a good direction to go with, to help me, to give me a path to clarify the details more of the whole picture that I have about researching about these transduction mechanisms, then also diving deeper into the different types of cells on each system and how they differentiate in the thresholds for action potentials and stuff like that. And then I have to think about how to ask questions that are gonna connect geometry with this, and then physics as well. Like how to ask a question that is gonna be able to give me a meaningful answer about the relationship between gravity and these actual potentials. Because I think it's gonna be very difficult to extract something like this. Probably not gonna give me a generic answer, so I have to understand the other models of other people better, and quantum mechanics, and also eigenvectors and stuff like that, in order to be able to ask good questions about that are gonna give me the connection between the two, I think. Or they're not gonna give me, because I don't think it has the answers, but help me clarify the details of all the information around everything, all these topics. So yeah, I think I'm gonna stop here. If this is still free for some time, I'm probably gonna come back with other questions after I think about a lot more about this, and then ask questions. If not, then next time I'm gonna continue to edit and build the next videos for the other channel.